The Colorado Territory blizzard descended like a vengeful spirit, transforming the February landscape into a frozen wasteland. Through the shrieking wind and blinding snow, frantic pounding echoed against the weathered barn door. A woman's voice, raw with desperation and pain, cut through the storm's fury. "Please, I'm dying out here. I swear I'll repay you. Just let me in." Inside the barn, Ethan Calloway pressed his spine against the rough timber wall, adrenaline surging through his veins. At 38, the former Union cavalry sergeant had survived 15 years since the war's end by trusting no one. His weathered hands gripped the Winchester rifle as he peered through a crack in the planking. An Apache woman stood trembling in the swirling snow, her traditional leather dress torn and blood-soaked. A mangled left wrist hung at a sickening angle, crimson drops painting the white powder beneath her bare feet. Her long black hair whipped around a face etched with exhaustion and fierce determination. "I know someone's in there," she gasped, her voice barely audible above the howling wind. "They burned my camp, murdered my brother Ayanna. They're hunting me like an animal." Ethan's pulse hammered against his temples. 7 years had passed since Apache raiders destroyed his family's homestead, killing his parents and abducting his 17-year-old sister Emily. The memory still haunted his dreams, returning from town to find his father's body in the yard, his mother's lifeless form in the kitchen doorway, and Emily's torn dress beside a pool of blood. The thunder of approaching hoofbeats shattered his thoughts. 6 riders materialized from the white curtain, like harbingers of death, and their leader's massive silhouette unmistakable in the pale moonlight. Gage Morrison, the territory's most feared bounty hunter, a man who'd built his blood-soaked fortune on Apache scalps and captured women. She headed this way. Morrison's voice boomed across the frozen landscape. "Fan out and search every structure. I want her breathing damaged. Merchandise fetches lower prices." Ethan's stomach clenched with disgust. Morrison's reputation for selling captured Apache women to brothels and mining camps was whispered in every saloon from Denver to Santa Fe. The territorial government paid $60 for Apache scalps, but live prisoners brought 10 times that amount to the right buyers. The woman collapsed against his door, her strength finally failing. Through the gap, Ethan studied her face, high cheekbones, a stubborn chin, eyes that held flickering intelligence despite her agony. Something about her features stirred a painful memory, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. She began to sing, her voice barely a whisper, but hauntingly familiar. "In Scarlet Town, where I was born, there was a fair maid dwelling. Made every youth cry well a day. Her name was Barbara Allen." Ethan's blood turned to ice. Barbara Allen had been his mother's favorite lullaby, the song she'd sung to Emily every night before bed. How could this Apache woman know those exact words? As if sensing his presence, she pressed her palm against the door. "Please, I have nowhere else to go. They'll do terrible things to me if they catch me." Morrison's men were circling the ranch now, their horses snorting steam in the bitter cold. Ethan had perhaps 20 seconds before they reached his door. Every survival instinct screamed at him to remain hidden, to let the storm and bounty hunters settle their business elsewhere. But as the woman's knees buckled and she began sliding down the door, something cracked open in his chest. Maybe it was the way she cradled her wounded arm protectively, or the fierce pride that kept her from weeping despite obvious torment. Maybe it was that haunting song, or simply that she reminded him of someone he'd failed to save. Against 7 years of hard-earned caution, Ethan unbarred the door and hauled her inside. She tumbled into his arms, light as a scarecrow, but burning with fever. Her skin was ice-cold, her breathing rapid and shallow. Hypothermia would claim her within the hour if he didn't act immediately. "What's your name?" he asked, dragging her toward the warmth of his pot-bellied stove. "Atala." She whispered, her dark eyes reflecting the lamp's glow. Apache name meaning wolf. Ethan wrapped his thickest blanket around her shoulders, examining the professionally twisted wrist deliberately broken during interrogation, judging by the angle. The wound was deep and jagged, already showing signs of infection. As he worked, she unconsciously tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, using the same distinctive gesture his sister Emily had always used. "Who did this to you?" "Morrison's men. They attacked our winter camp at dawn, killed my brother when he tried to protect me." Her voice cracked with grief. "Set fire to everything. I barely escaped through the smoke." As she spoke, Ethan noticed a crescent-shaped scar on her left shoulder, visible through her torn dress. The mark looked strangely familiar, like something from a half-remembered dream. Outside, Morrison's boots struck the frozen ground. "Search every building systematically. The blood trail leads directly here. She's wounded badly, won't survive long in this weather." Ethan's mind raced. Morrison wasn't just any outlaw, he was a businessman who transformed the Apache Wars into a profitable enterprise. Though the territorial governor officially denied knowledge of scalp bounties, everyone knew the mining companies paid handsomely for pacification efforts. "They want me alive," Tala whispered, reading his thoughts. "Apache women who speak English. We're worth more than corpses." Morrison's fist pounded the barn door. "Open up, Calloway. We've tracked a dangerous fugitive to your property." Ethan's pulse quickened. They knew his name, which meant they'd been watching his ranch. "For how long?" "This is private land," Ethan called back. "You have no authority here." "I carry territorial bounty warrants," Morrison replied smoothly. "And I'm pursuing an Apache killer who murdered 3 innocent settlers near Pueblo. She's armed, violent, and extremely dangerous." Ethan glanced at Tala, who could barely lift her head. Armed and dangerous, Morrison's lies flowed like poison honey. "Haven't seen any Apache," Ethan said. "Storm's been too thick to see past the fence line." Morrison's laughter sounded like breaking glass. "Interesting, Calloway. Because her blood trail leads straight to your door. Fresh drops still warm in the snow." The barn door exploded inward with a thunderous crash. Morrison and 2 gunmen burst through, revolvers drawn and cocked. Ethan's rifle boomed in the confined space, the muzzle flash illuminating the scene in stark, violent detail. His first shot caught the lead bounty hunter in the shoulder, spinning him like a child's top. The man screamed and dropped his weapon, blood gushing between his fingers. The second hunter dove behind a feed trough, his return fire splintering wooden beams above Ethan's head. "End him!" Morrison roared, his own pistol spitting flame. Ethan rolled behind hay bales as bullets whined through the air. Wood chips and dust filled the space, the acrid smell of gunpowder burning his nostrils. In the chaos, he glimpsed Tala crawling toward the back wall, leaving a blood trail but trying to draw danger away from him. Even wounded and delirious, she was protecting him. The gesture stirred something deep in his chest, a memory of someone else who'd been brave when courage seemed impossible. His second shot found its mark. The bounty hunter behind the trough jerked upright, eyes wide with shock, then toppled forward. His weapon clattered across the wooden floor as he lay motionless. Morrison retreated to the doorway, his face contorted with rage. "You just murdered 2 of my men, Calloway. That makes you an accessory to federal crimes. Self-defense." Ethan replied, keeping his rifle trained on the exit. "You broke into my property with weapons drawn." "We had legal warrants." "Show me the paperwork." Morrison's hesitation revealed the truth. The bounty hunter spat into the snow and mounted his horse. "This isn't finished, boy. I'll return with reinforcements, and next time I'll burn everything to ash." As the surviving bounty hunters vanished into the storm, Ethan found Tala unconscious in the hayloft. Her fever was spiking dangerously, and the infected wound had begun to smell of gangrene. Without proper medical treatment, she would die within 2 days. But obtaining help meant riding into Bitter Creek, where Apache were shot on sight, and explanations came later. The town's residents lived in constant terror of raids, and Morrison's men were likely already spreading their poisonous version of events. 2 days after the first battle, Ethan made his desperate decision. At dawn, he saddled his horse and rode hard through the snow-covered hills toward town. The storm had passed, leaving behind a crystalline world of deceptive beauty. Smoke rose from Bitter Creek's chimneys, and the main street bustled with early morning activity. Dr. Henry Blackwood's clinic occupied a narrow building between the general store and barber shop. The elderly physician looked up from his breakfast when Ethan burst through the door. "Ethan Calloway," Blackwood said, adjusting his wire spectacles. "What brings you to town in such weather?" "Need antibiotics and surgical supplies," Ethan replied carefully. "Treating a severe infection and compound fracture." "Bring the patient in for examination." "Too critical to transport. Need the medicines now." Blackwood frowned with professional concern. "What type of injury specifically?" Before Ethan could respond, the clinic door swung open. Sheriff Thomas Wade entered, his star gleaming in the morning light. Behind him came Morrison, his face twisted with predatory satisfaction. "Morning, Doctor." "Ethan." Wade tipped his hat. "Heard about some trouble at your ranch yesterday evening." "Nothing I couldn't handle," Ethan replied evenly. Morrison stepped forward, his hand resting on his gun. "3 of my men are dead shot down while pursuing a dangerous fugitive. We tracked her directly to Calloway's property." "What kind of fugitive?" Wade asked, his eyes narrowing. "Apache woman. Wanted for multiple murders and horse theft. She's wounded and desperate, probably hiding in Calloway's barn at this very moment." Ethan forced his voice to remain steady. "I told you yesterday, I haven't seen any Apache." "Then you won't object to a thorough search," Wade said. "For everyone's safety." Every second they delayed brought Tala closer to death. "Storm damaged my roof extensively. Making critical repairs. Don't have time for search parties." Morrison's grin widened like a wolf's. "Afraid we'll discover something incriminating." "Afraid you'll steal something valuable," Ethan shot back. "Your reputation precedes you, Morrison." The bounty hunter's face darkened with fury. "Watch your tongue, boy. I operate under territorial authority. You operate under territorial corruption," Ethan corrected. "Everyone knows the mining companies finance your operations." "Enough," Wade interrupted. "Morrison produced these warrants you mentioned." Morrison's slight hesitation spoke volumes. "They're secured at my base camp. Didn't anticipate needing them for a simple capture." "How convenient," Ethan muttered. "I'll tell you what's convenient," Morrison snarled. "A man living alone who harbors Apache fugitives. Makes one question his loyalties during wartime." The tension stretched taut as a bowstring. Dr. Blackwood clutched his medical bag, face pale with fear. Wade's hand moved instinctively toward his revolver. "A gentleman," the sheriff said slowly. "Everyone needs to remain calm." Ethan grabbed the medical supplies and backed toward the door. "Much obliged, Doctor. I'll settle payment later." "Wait," Morrison commanded. "You're not leaving. Try to stop me." The standoff lasted 3 heartbeats. Then Morrison's hand dropped to his gun, and Ethan dove through the doorway. He hit the boardwalk, running medical supplies clutched against his chest. Behind him, shouts erupted and boots pounded on wood. A gunshot cracked through the morning air. A bullet splintered the hitching post beside his head. Ethan vaulted into his saddle and spurred his horse into motion. The animal responded instantly, hooves striking sparks from the frozen street. More shots followed, but distance rendered them ineffective. Ethan bent low over his mount's neck and rode hard for the hills, pushing the beast to its limits. The pursuit would come swiftly. Morrison wouldn't abandon his prize easily. But as Ethan crested the first ridge, he heard the thunder of hoofbeats behind him. 4 riders emerged from the town, Morrison's massive frame leading the charge. They were gaining ground rapidly, their fresh horses outpacing his tired mount. "Are there?" Morrison's voice echoed across the valley. "Run him down." The chase became a deadly game of cat and mouse through treacherous mountain terrain. Ethan's horse struggled up steep, snow-covered slopes while bullets whined past his ears. Behind him, Morrison's men spread out in a hunting formation, trying to cut off his escape routes. The trail narrowed to a precarious ledge carved into the mountainside, with a sheer drop yawning to the left and an impassable rock wall to the right. Ethan's horse stumbled on the icy surface, nearly sending them both plunging into the abyss. Behind him, Morrison's men closed the distance, their weapons ready. "Give up, Calloway," Morrison shouted. "There's nowhere left to run." Ethan reached a hairpin turn where the path doubled back on itself. In a desperate gambit, he dismounted and rolled behind a boulder, using the terrain for cover. His rifle cracked twice in rapid succession, and one of Morrison's men toppled from his saddle, plummeting into the gorge below. The remaining pursuers took cover among the rocks, returning fire. Bullets sparked off stone inches from Ethan's head. His horse, spooked by the gunfire, bolted down the mountain path, leaving him stranded. "You're finished?" Morrison called. No horse-limited ammunition and nowhere to hide. But Ethan knew these mountains better than any outsider. He had spent years hunting in these peaks, learning every trail and hidden passage. While Morrison's men advanced cautiously, he slipped away through a narrow crevice in the rock wall. The fissure led to a hidden cave system that emerged half a mile down the mountain. Ethan crawled through the suffocating darkness, his wounded shoulders screaming with each movement. Behind him, he could hear Morrison's men shouting in frustration as they discovered his escape route. He emerged from the cave as the sun reached its zenith, his clothes torn and his body battered. The medical supplies were intact, but he had no horse and miles to cover before reaching the ranch. Every minute counted. Tala was dying, and Morrison would surely return with reinforcements. Ethan began the long trek home, his legs burning with exhaustion. The snow crunched beneath his boots, and the mountain air seared his lungs. But he pressed on, driven by an inexplicable need to save the woman who reminded him so much of Emily. As he descended toward the valley, movement caught his eye. Morrison's men were regrouping at the base of the mountain, their faces grim with determination. They had given up the chase for now, but they would be back. Ethan reached his ranch as the sun began to set. He found Tala exactly where he'd left her, burning with fever and barely conscious. Her lips were blue with cold, and her breathing came in shallow gasps. "I brought medicine," he said, kneeling beside her. She opened her eyes, focusing on him with great difficulty. "You came back." "They were shooting," I made a promise. As he cleaned her wound and applied fresh bandages, Tala began to speak in a dreamy, fever-induced voice. She told him about her childhood, her memories fragmented and unclear. She spoke of a white house with green shutters, a massive oak tree in the yard, and a man with kind eyes who used to push her on a swing. "I remember a woman singing," she murmured. "The same song I sang before. She had the sweetest voice, like morning bird song." Ethan's hands stilled. "Do you remember anything else about her?" "She wore a silver necklace, heart-shaped with letters carved inside. She said it belonged to her daughter, that it would protect her from harm." The blood drained from Ethan's face. That necklace had been their grandmother's, passed down through 3 generations of Calloway women. He had given it to Emily for her 16th birthday, just 1 year before the raid. "What happened to the necklace?" he asked, his voice barely steady. I think I have it, or had it. The memories are so unclear." She touched her throat unconsciously. "Sometimes I dream about it shining in the moonlight." But before Ethan could process this revelation fully, the sound of approaching horses shattered the night. Morrison had returned, and this time he'd brought an army. 3 days after the chase through the mountains, Morrison struck with overwhelming force. 30 riders surrounded the ranch in a carefully coordinated assault, their torches turning night into day. They had learned from their previous failures. This time, there would be no escape. "Eli." Morrison's voice boomed across the yard. You're surrounded by federal marshals and territorial militia. Come out with your hands raised or we'll drag you out in pieces." Ethan counted the riders through his window. They weren't marshals. They were mercenaries hired guns who worked for the highest bidder. But they were well-armed and professionally positioned, blocking every exit from the ranch. "I see them," Tala whispered, struggling to her feet. Her fever had broken, and her eyes were clearer than they'd been in days. 30 men, maybe more. They have us trapped. Now, can you fight? I'd rather die fighting than let Morrison take me alive. Ethan had spent the previous day preparing for this moment. He'd rigged explosive charges around the ranch perimeter using gunpowder from his ammunition supplies and scrap metal from broken farm equipment. Trip wires stretched across the most likely approach routes connected to improvised landmines that would cripple any advance. "They'll try to burn us out," he said, checking his weapons. "Morrison wants you alive, but he'll settle for revenge if he has to. Then we make them pay for every step." Morrison's assault began at midnight. The first wave of attackers approached from the east, their horses moving cautiously through the snow. Ethan watched them through his rifle scope, waiting for the perfect moment. The lead rider's horse stepped on a tripwire. The explosion lit up the night sky, and the man disappeared in a ball of fire and smoke. His companions' horses reared and bolted, throwing their riders into the snow. "What the hell was that?" Morrison roared. "Looks like Calloway's been busy," one of his men replied. The second wave came from the west, moving more carefully, but still falling victim to Ethan's traps. Another explosion echoed across the valley, and 2 more riders went down. The survivors retreated in disarray, their confidence shaken. "Burn them out," Morrison commanded. "I want every building torched." His men hurled torches at the ranch house and barn. But Ethan had soaked the walls with water from the well. The flames sputtered and died, leaving only scorch marks on the wet wood. "On the roof," Morrison shouted. "Get men on the roof." But Ethan had anticipated this tactic. As the first climber reached the peak, a hidden rope snare caught his ankle. He tumbled screaming into the yard, his leg bent at an impossible angle. The battle raged for hours, with Morrison's men launching wave after wave of attacks. Ethan's traps and defensive positions took a terrible toll. Bodies littered the snow, and the air filled with the screams of wounded men and horses. But gradually, the sheer weight of numbers began to tell. Morrison's men overwhelmed the outer defenses, forcing Ethan and Tala to retreat into the ranch house. Bullets shattered windows, and smoke filled the rooms as the attackers finally succeeded in setting the building ablaze. "We have to get out," Ethan said, grabbing Tala's hand. They ran for the back door, but Morrison was waiting. He stood in the doorway, his massive frame silhouetted against the flames. His gun was trained on Ethan's chest. "End of the line, boy." Ethan raised his rifle, but Morrison was faster. The bounty hunter's bullet caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He crashed into the burning wall, his weapon clattering across the floor. Morrison advanced slowly, savoring his moment of triumph. "Should have minded your own business, Calloway. Now you'll both pay the price." Tala stepped between them, her own pistol steady in her hands. "Stay back, Morrison." The bounty hunter laughed. "You think you can threaten me, Apache whore? I've killed more of your kind than you can count." "Maybe so, but you haven't killed me yet." "No," Morrison said, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "But I will. After I'm done with you, after I've sold you to the highest bidder, then I'll come back and finish what I started 7 years ago." Ethan's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" Morrison's grin revealed yellowed teeth. "Did you really think that raid on your family was random? I sold information about isolated homesteads to Apache war parties. Your parents were just business casualties." "You bastard," Ethan snarled, trying to reach his fallen rifle. "And your precious sister," Morrison continued. "I knew she survived the raid. Been tracking her for years, waiting for the right moment to collect my prize." Tala's face went pale. What are you talking about? You don't remember, do you? The head injury scrambled your brains pretty good. But I never forgot those pretty blue eyes, that stubborn Calloway chin. Morrison's voice dripped with malice. I've been looking for Emily Calloway for 7 years, and now I finally found her. The revelation hit Ethan like a thunderbolt. He stared at Tala, at Emily, seeing not just a resemblance, but the truth he'd been blind to. The song, the gestures, the scar on her shoulder, where he'd accidentally cut her with a broken bottle when they were children. She was his sister, grown and changed by 7 years of hardship, but unmistakably Emily. No. Emily whispered, her memories flooding back in a torrent of pain and recognition. You're lying. Am I then? Why do you remember that song? Why do you dream about oak trees and white houses? Morrison's laughter was like breaking glass. Your Apache friends found you after the raid, nursed you back to health. But they couldn't repair what was broken up here. He tapped his temple. Lucky for me, Emily's gun wavered as the full truth crashed over her. She remembered everything now, the raid, the burning house, her parents' screams, and Morrison's face among the attackers. She remembered Ethan, her beloved older brother, and the life they'd shared before it was torn away. Ethan, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I remember everything. Morrison struck while she was distracted, knocking the gun from her hands. He grabbed her throat with one massive hand, pressing his pistol against her temple with the other. Nobody move, he screamed. One wrong step and I'll paint the walls with her brains. Ethan struggled to his feet, his wounded shoulder screaming in protest. Let her go, Morrison. This is between you and me. A no deal. She's my golden ticket, my retirement fund. Do you have any idea what collectors will pay for a genuine Apache-raised white woman? Morrison's grip tightened on Emily's throat. She's going to make me rich. She's my sister, you murdering bastard. She's been through enough. Your sister? Morrison's eyes glittered with madness. Then you'll understand why I'm going to enjoy breaking her spirit piece by piece. Emily met Ethan's eyes across the burning room. In that moment, he saw not the Apache woman he'd rescued, but the girl she'd been brave, determined, unbroken by years of hardship and loss. I love you, brother, she said quietly. I love you too, Emily. Morrison's attention flickered for an instant, distracted by their exchange. Emily drove her elbow into his ribs, breaking free of his grip. Ethan's shot took Morrison in the chest, but the bounty hunter's reflexes were quicker than his wounds. As he fell, Morrison's gun swung toward Emily. His final bullet caught her in the side, spinning her around. She crashed to the floor, blood spreading across her shirt. Emily. Ethan's voice broke as he crawled toward her. She looked up at him, her eyes already growing dim. I'm sorry I forgot you. I'm sorry I couldn't remember. Don't apologize. You survived. That's all that matters. I remember now. I remember everything. The swing, the songs, the way you used to read to me before bed. She smiled weakly. I remember how much you loved me. I never stopped loving you. Even when I thought you were dead, I never stopped. Emily's breathing grew shallow. Promise me something. Anything. Don't let the hatred win. Don't let Morrison's poison spread. Help people the way you helped me. Show them there's another way. I promise. She squeezed his hand one last time, then closed her eyes. Ethan held her as the fire consumed the ranch house around them, his tears falling on her peaceful face. Sheriff Wade and his deputies arrived as the sun rose, drawn by the smoke and sounds of battle. They found Ethan stumbling from the burning building, carrying Emily's body in his arms. Morrison lay dead among the ashes. His reign of terror finally ended. The federal investigation that followed revealed the full scope of Morrison's criminal enterprise. His network of corruption reached from the territorial capital to the mining camps of Colorado. Dozens of officials were arrested, and the scalp bounty system was officially abolished. But for Ethan, justice felt hollow. He had found his sister only to lose her again, and the weight of that loss nearly destroyed him. He spent weeks in a dark depression, barely eating, unable to sleep. It was a letter that finally pulled him from his despair. Hidden in Morrison's belongings, the investigators had found a faded envelope addressed to "My dearest children." Inside was a letter from their mother, written shortly before the raid. "My beloved Ethan and Emily, if you are reading this, then something terrible has happened to your father and me. But I want you to know that our love for you will never die. You are the light of our lives, the joy of our hearts, the hope of our future. Ethan, you are strong and brave, but remember that strength without compassion is mere brutality. Protect those who cannot protect themselves. Show mercy to those who have fallen. Your sister looks up to you. Be the man she believes you to be. Emily. You are gentle and kind, but remember that kindness without courage is mere weakness. Stand up for what is right. Fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. Your brother loves you deeply. Never doubt that love. Together, you are unstoppable. Apart, you are still connected by bonds that death cannot break. Take care of each other, and remember that we will always be with you. All our love, mother and father." Ethan read the letter through tears, hearing his mother's voice in every word. It was Emily who had made him remember this lesson. Emily who had shown him that love could triumph over hatred, compassion over revenge. He buried his sister beside their parents in the family cemetery under the old oak tree where they'd played as children. The headstone read simply, "Emily Calloway, beloved sister, 1851-1878. She chose love over fear." In the months that followed, Ethan rebuilt his ranch with a new purpose. He opened his doors to anyone in need, displaced Apache families, war veterans, orphaned children, and refugees from the ongoing conflicts that plagued the territory. He established a school where children learned to read and write in both English and Apache, bridging the gap between two worlds. The ranch became known throughout the territory as a place of healing and hope. People came from hundreds of miles away, seeking not just shelter, but redemption. Ethan taught them that survival didn't require the destruction of others, that strength came from lifting up the fallen rather than stepping on them. Years passed, and the ranch prospered. The small community grew into a thriving town with businesses, churches, and schools. The Apache Wars finally ended not through victory or defeat, but through understanding and mutual respect. On quiet evenings, Ethan would sit on his porch and watch the sunset paint the mountains gold and crimson. He would think of Emily, of her courage and sacrifice, of the promise he'd made to her as she lay dying in his arms. He had kept that promise. The hatred had not won. Morrison's poison had not spread. In its place, love had taken root and flourished. And sometimes, when the wind was just right, he could swear he heard his sister's voice singing "Barbara Allen" on the evening breeze, a reminder that some bonds are stronger than death and some promises are worth keeping forever. The poor Apache woman who had begged to be let in from the cold had indeed changed his fate. She had given him back his sister, if only for a brief, precious moment. And in losing her again, she had taught him the greatest lesson of all, that love, not hatred, was the only force capable of healing a broken world. In the end, that lesson was worth more than any treasure the frontier could offer. It was Emily's final gift to him and her greatest victory over the darkness that had tried to claim them both.